So now we have all the parts assembled for the LA2A. I want to start working on our turret boards. So this is a turret board. These little metal pins are the turrets. That's where all of our components will solder to. The way this works, we take one of our components, it'll lay across the turret like that, and then bend around, and then solder. So what I've found is that this sort of pre-made turret board that you can buy, it's really convenient, but a lot of components, particularly resistors, modern resistors, have leads that are this long or a bit shorter, and they just have enough to wrap around. And it can be cumbersome to keep them on. So my preference is to build with this kind of turret board, which does not have the turrets pre-installed. And this does a couple things for you. It lets you lay out the turrets exactly the way you want. So if you have shorter components, you can put the turrets closer together. You can space them out, things like that. It takes more time because I'm going to take, after I've done my layout, I'm going to put all the turrets in manually. So it can take some more time. I think it's worthwhile in most cases, but it might not be for you. So definitely something to look into. It also costs a bit more to do this than to just buy the turret board pre-made. So if you're using a pre-made turret board, then you can just set your layout according to this and start installing components. So we're going to set up the layout now for this turret board. So if you're using this pre-existing layout, you could do that pretty much off one of these without too much work. Just lay it out as it is. So I'm going to do a little bit of work here with this turret board to decide exactly how spaced each of my turrets should be. One thing to note, whichever way you're doing it, it's really important to make sure that you're not just building based on this diagram, but you're building based on this diagram and relating it at all times to the schematic, so that you know each of these resistors where they connect to make sure that this is not only that this is correct, but also that you understand where everything connects, so that when there's a problem, you understand how you've connected it. You just didn't do it based on this diagram. So the first thing I've done is I've taken my board, set it on a piece of paper, outlined it, and then marked where each of the holes are. This way I have a graph paper that I can start laying my components on to decide exactly where they go. So this is the layout I'm going to base everything on. So I'm going to start on one side. Now I have 27 turret holes, columns on this, and I only need 24. So I have 3 extra. So I'm going to leave one at each end to have room to add screws. And then I'll leave one in the middle somewhere. We'll see where it works out best. So I'm going to start off with this right side for no apparent reason. I have 2 diodes that look like this. So they both need to go here. And I've measured all my components, and for most of my components, I'll be able to go across 5 turret holes. So I'm going to go ahead and mark where I want the holes for this diode and the next diode. So for the most part, I'm going to have them 5 across all the way, but we'll see how that works out. So I'm just going to go through and measure every single one of my components now and see how they're going to fit. Some of my capacitors are a little bit bigger, wider at least. So it might be nice to have a little bit more room for those to make sure I can work. There are also places where we have a capacitor and a resistor together, so I might want to space more there. And also this trimmer capacitor here that might use some extra room. So I'm just going to determine where it makes sense to have extra space there. Now, as I decide on my layout, just to help organizationally, I'm going to set my components down on another piece of paper and tape them along the board where they're going to go. Certainly not something you have to do, but anything you can do at this stage to help organize your components will definitely help you. So I'm going to mark my spacing, tape my components down, and then we'll go and build this turret board. I've got my layout done, and before I go to actually put these in, I'm going to go ahead and mark them. So I'm just making little black outlines on the holes I need them to go into. So that one. And this is just to help me a little bit more when I go to actually put them in. Then another thing I did, I have all my components laid out here. Film capacitors, electrolytic capacitors, and resistors. And I put them all in order of value, just so as I'm going to find them, it's a lot easier to find them. That little bit of time will save you a lot of time in digging through and finding the right parts. So now I have the drill press set up to do this turret board. So this is a special jig, a pin and a sleeve at the bottom. So I put the turret in at the bottom. And then I put my board in so the turret is over the hole where I wanted it to be. And then I'm just pushing down with the drill. So I don't have the drill turned on, it's not spinning. I'm just using it as a way to force down that end of the turret. So I'm just smashing it down so it rounds over on the bottom. So I'll put another one in and show you. So as I'm pushing down, I'm doing it not just one push, but some little pushes, sort of bouncing it a little bit. I find that works pretty well. And then you want to make sure that it doesn't spin after you've done that. If it does spin, go ahead and do it again so it's nice and tight.